All right, so here we are. We're now going to look at the high-low method, an example of it, right? So before I don't want to say I rushed through the example or to rush through the information, but what I wanted to make sure is that point came across. But more importantly, what I want to do now is to do an example because sometimes it can be a lot, right? So what I'm going to do now is over the next 2 slides, we're going to look at examples of applying the high-low method, okay? So I'm going to switch platforms for a second. All right, so here we are doing the high-low method, and this is example number 2. So if you're following along with the demonstration, here you are, okay? All right, so let's get started. So we're given all of this information, and so we're being asked to use the high-low method to determine A, the variable cost per unit, and then B, the total fixed cost, okay? So maybe go back to slide number 15 so you can understand what is our formula, but if not, I will also go ahead and write it here. So let's start off with first that our formula is total cost, overall formula is total cost equals our variable cost plus our fixed cost. Okay, kind of wrote it backwards, but we'll fix it in a second, okay? All right, so right now, when we're doing the high-low method, we need to ensure that we first select what is the highest level of activity in the number of units produced, and then we need to identify the lowest, right? So our highest level of activity came in the month of March, okay? So March, we produced 30,000 units, right? And so now we need to look at what is our lowest, right? So in scanning and scanning, here it is, January, right? January has the lowest level of activity or units produced at 20,000 units, right? All right, so now from here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna focus on calculating our variable portion of our formula, right? Trying to come up with a formula to predict cost, right? Using a high-low method, we're gonna first come up with our variable cost per unit, okay? All right, so to do so, I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller so I can have some space to write. Okay. All right, so our formula for the variable cost per unit equals, it's gonna be our difference in total cost, divided by our difference in units, or units produced, POD produced. All right, so here we are. So we said our highest level was the month of March, and that was our total cost is 2,400,000, right? And then our lowest level was in January, and that total cost came out to 1,900,000. Okay. And we're going to divide that by the number of units produced for both the highest level and the lowest level. So for the month of March, it was 30,000 units less our January, which is 20,000. Okay. All right, so if we consolidate this formula, what we're going to have is we do 2.4 million, right? So 2.4 million minus my 1.9 million. That comes out to 500,000. And then my, if I do the difference here, this is gonna be 10,000, right? So my variable cost per unit is $50 per unit, okay? So this is what I would put here in A. My number would be $50 per unit, okay? But that's not enough. So it's asking us to make sure we come up with the total fixed cost as well, right? So that's this part. So now that I've figured out what is my variable cost, I'm going to erase for a bit. And now I'm going to come up with my fixed cost. So give me a second. All right. So let's do our fixed cost, all right? So reminder, our formula is total cost equals our fixed cost plus our variable cost. And now because we're trying to figure out only what our fixed cost is, we are going to rearrange the organization. We're going to rearrange the equation just to have fixed cost by itself. And to do that, we're going to minus variable cost from both sides. And our new formula is going to be fixed cost equals our total cost minus variable cost. Okay. So now we're going to just pick that one of the highest or the lowest level of activity. So for us, let's just go with the lowest level activity. And for us, that is January, right? All right, so we're going to use that information to plug it in here. So we're trying to figure out fixed costs, right? And then our total cost is 1,900,000 minus our fixed cost that we've already figured out, which was $50 per unit, right? So we're going to do a parentheses $50 per unit times the number of units produced in the month of January, which is 20,000 units. Now from here, it's just a simple as solving the equation. So first I'm going to solve what's in the parentheses first, right? So I'm going to just rewrite this. So if I did 50 times 20,000 units, that should come up with $1 million, okay? Now I'm gonna again simplify. So if I did $1.9 million minus $1 million, that comes up with $900,000. And there we have it. My answer for total fixed cost is that's not $1 million, I lied. That would be $900,000. So to further write out my formula to capture this, it will be total cost equals fixed cost of 900, not agreeing with the 900,000, 900,000 plus my variable cost of $50 per unit. And there we have it, okay? All right, so now what we're gonna do is go ahead and move on to another example. And so here we are, example number 3. So maybe you take a second to figure this out and then come back and see if we come up with the same answers, okay? So I'm gonna pause it, you pause it, work through this and see if you can come up with the same answers that will appear. All right, guys, so hopefully you came up with some of these same answers. So once I did all of my calculations, my variable cost per unit came out to $175.50. And then my total fixed cost came out to $11,060,000. Now B is one that we did not discuss, so I wanted to come back and make sure I showed you these answers, but also explain B. So give me a second, and I am going to, for a second, just cut this out and then put it somewhere else, okay? All right, so what I want to now discuss is this bit here, okay? So again, we're going to discuss B. Now B says, based on A's information, basically, estimate the total cost of 115,000 units of production. So now that we have our formula, if I can be so sophisticated to write our new formula is equal to total cost equals our fixed cost of $11,060,000 plus our variable cost of $175.50 per unit, okay? And so now it's asking us to estimate what would be our total cost if we produce, or if we so happen to produce 115,000 units. Now to do that, we're just gonna simply plug this in. So total cost is our $11,060,000, representing our fixed cost, plus our variable cost per unit of $175.50 times the number of units in question that we want to understand the total cost about, which is 115,000 units, right? So now from here, we're just going to do the math behind it. So we're going to do 175.50 times the 115,000 units that we're going to produce That comes out to 20,182,500. Right. And then plus our fixed cost of the 11,060, right? Therefore, our total cost of producing 115,000 units is 20,000 plus the 11,060. Our total cost comes out to 31,242,500. Now, really, that is really, for a second, this is in line with kind of somewhat of here, right? So I would have expected that if I'm producing a little less than 120,000 units, right? If I'm producing a little less than 120,000 units, my cost should be definitely lower than 32,120,000. And it is, right? We are producing 115,000, and our cost should be somewhat within that range of this number here, all of this information. And there you have it, folks. That's how we do the high and low method.